No clue what they all went through. Oh, look at it.
Oh,
It's
here we
like,
go. What? The show?
should I get rid of my
The
pillows?
show?
Building a better Bay Area. Moving forward, finding solutions. Building.
Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm Dion Lim, and you're watching Getting Answers live on ABC7, Hulu Live, and wherever you stream. What we do is we ask experts your questions every day at 3 o'clock to get you answers in real time. I'm really excited about today's show because we start off with the man who was incarcerated and also homeless. He's a little bit later on. He has turned his life around and is now an advocate for truth about these issues. We cannot wait for you to hear his story. Also, we're taking a look at the dating world in this pandemic. We'll talk about what's changed, what hasn't, and how to really navigate this new world. But first, let's break down the very latest COVID headlines. So joining us now is ABC7's special correspondent, Dr. Alok Patel. It has been far too long, Doctor.
Dion, it has. It's an honor to be with you. I follow your advocacy on Instagram, and you're like a local celebrity, and I'm like, I want another segment with you.
Hardly. I think you're the one who's been a celebrity. You've been on Good Morning America. You've been everywhere. So let's get right to it, because I know that we only have a few minutes with you. And I hear from our producer that you want to get right to it and play two lies and a truth, a little bit of a take on the usual game.
You're correct. Usually what our viewers know is we play two truths and a lie. You have to tell me which headline is false. Today, we're going to switch it up. The theme is boosters. We're going to play two falses and a truth. So I'm going to read off three scenarios about people getting boosters, and you have to tell me which one actually follows the CDC recommendations.
Okay, sounds
Are
like
you
a
ready?
plan. Yes, and everybody who's on Facebook, please chime in. I am going to take some of your questions a little bit later in the commercial break. So take it away.
All right, rock and roll. Tell me which one of these is actually following the right recommendations. Is it A, 37-year-old, works in a hospital, got the Pfizer vaccine in June, now is getting a Moderna booster? Or is it B, a 72-year-old professional video game player, awesome job, got the Moderna shots in March and is getting a full dose Moderna booster? Or is it C, 19-year-old college student, got the J&J shot in August, is getting a Pfizer booster because that's her preference?
Ooh.
Which one actually follows the guidelines?
Okay.
I made this deliberately tricky because these are the questions that we're all getting right now.
You know what's throwing me off is the professions of everyone. I don't know if they actually have anything to do with the question or if they're a trick, but for me, I am willing to bet that B is the truth, because it seems like the dates are far apart enough, and, you know, two of the same vaccine seems very likely these days. What do you think?
Well, these are hypothetical scenarios.
Okay,
I will tell you.
Ray says A, Carol is saying C, Osman is saying B. So really, we are all over the board. Dr. Patel, you are really getting tricky on us.
Well, you know, it's not me getting tricky. The headlines right now, what's happening, the information that's being thrown out there, it is tricky because it's changed so much. So I will tell you, are we ready for final answer?
Yes, drum roll, please. Da 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 da.
The one that actually follows the guidelines right now is C. That is the one that is following exactly what the guidelines say. Now, we can run through these really quickly. So if you look at A, this person should be getting a booster. However, I said June, and the actual EUA for the Pfizer booster is 6 months after the shot. It has not been 6 months since June.
Oh.
And we are allowed to mix and match vaccines, so Moderna is okay. If you look at B, this amazing video game player who lives at home got Moderna in March. That is the correct time frame. It's in more than 6 months. But the Moderna booster is actually half dose, not full dose.
Oh,
and that is important because if you're going to run out, and you need to specify that you're getting a booster and you're not getting your primary series if you're going to get Moderna. And C is important because it comes down, preference is important, and making sure that you know your options is a valid decision. If you're going to get the J&J shot and you all of a sudden want to get a different one because of what you've heard with data. So this 19-year-old, it doesn't matter, above 18, 2 months after the J&J shot, and it is absolutely acceptable to mix and match. So there you have it.
Oh boy, there were so many details in each of these possibilities. I just am so confused. So I'm glad that we're talking. By the way, a shout out to Brenda and to Gregory. It looks like both of you got this quiz correct on your end.
And Carol. I think Carol was the first one.
Let us not forget Carol, who says yay, double exclamation points. So sending a hello to you as well, Carol. You know, Dr. Doctor, on this topic, we have received so many mixed reactions from this week regarding the first topic. I mean, where do we even begin in making sense of all of it?
And making sense with all the boosters. So,
Yes.
I think it really has to come down to what we're worried about and what we're trying to prevent. And at the end of the day, the important thing that we've been saying over and over again is that the vaccines are still highly effective against hospitalization and severe death. Now, what is concerning is the waning antibody level, which some experts say that might lead to waning immunity. You can't just jump from waning antibody levels to waning immunity because we know that the immune system is more complex than that. But we are seeing more of those, and I hate this term, breakthrough cases in Americans who are above the age of 65, but also those who are highly exposed. And that's what this all comes down to. And the reason I say that is if anyone out there is sincerely concerned and saying, am I high risk? You got to look at the facts. Like, are you above 65? Do you have any underlying medical conditions, or are you at risk of being exposed to COVID-19 if you work in a hospital, a nursing facility, if you work in a jam-packed school in a community where vaccination levels aren't that high? And that's what you start with. You say, like, am I someone who needs a booster? And remember, mixing and matching is very beneficial, especially when it comes to availability. And one thing that I want to see play out in the real world is that when we have these mass vaccination programs, so let's say there's a vaccination supply going to a nursing facility, Dion, it's so much easier if they just bring one vaccine and then instead of trying to match boosters with every single person's primary series. And so hopefully the rollout goes smoothly and people just finally know the facts and we get those booster numbers up for those who need it.
That reminds me of the initial vaccines where at the point where everyone just said, okay, whatever we can get our hands on, let's just get it. And that was the recommendation from so many health officials. Speaking of that subject, we are getting a question in from a super user named Mark. Will it be recommended that children will need a booster shot? What are you hearing?
To be honest, I haven't heard anything yet about children needing a booster shot because we do feel like this is an age so far that has, knock on wood, has done relatively well against severe hospitalization illness. And there is no way to tell if the antibody levels in children are waning after vaccination because they haven't been vaccinated yet. And so what we're waiting to see is what's going to happen on October 26th-ish when, we finally sit down, when the FDA and the CDC sit down and look at all the data, which looks promising so far, with Pfizer releasing new data saying that the Pfizer vaccine is above 90% effective in preventing symptomatic COVID-19 in those kids aged 5 to 11. So I think that's the first step to see what's going to happen with that data. And hopefully we have shots in arms for those school-age kids come early November.
Well, on the topic of kids, California public health officials, they've said that they will not relax those school mask mandates. So kids should expect to wear masks in school all through the winter. Do you agree on this?
Deanna, I think this is a tough one. And I actually do feel for those public health officials who are trying to make broad recommendations right now, because now what I would like to see is metrics in place that are dependent on the community when we're looking at schools. Now, what do vaccination and transmission rates look like in a school? Because this could very well differ if we have, for example, a high school where 80% of the teens and the teachers are vaccinated in a community with very low transmission rates versus another place where you might have younger children, you might not have a high vaccination rate. And the mask recommendations in both of those may differ. And so it is hard for me to say broadly, like, yes, mask everyone in schools throughout winter. I would much rather see those guidelines in place, especially because that actually sends a really good signal saying, hey, vaccinations work. If we get to a certain level, we can get those masks off.
I think something that you have echoed for a very long time now during this pandemic. Before we head to break, I think we have time for one more question, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit because it has to do with the surge, because it reminded me today, as I saw all the pumpkin spice and the holiday things start coming out on the market, that the holidays are around the corner. Do you?
The first thing you said was pumpkin spice.
I mean, it's everywhere, right? I mean, pumpkin spice candles and sauces, everything. So that just got me thinking about the surge. And I know many people are concerned about that holiday surge that we saw last year. Do you anticipate the same thing? But we have these boosters now. Things have changed.
Things absolutely have changed. And I am not, nor is anyone I speak to, as worried as we were last year. And part of that is because of the high level of vaccination in many parts of this country, including, and I have to recognize, a high level of natural immunity as well. But again, we still have more than 70 million, about 65, 70 million eligible Americans above the age of 12 who have not yet gotten vaccinated. And there are some communities where this is an even higher, more concentrated issue. So there's absolutely a risk there. And this is why I think there's so much discussion right now about what's happening in the UK with the recent surge, because they've been fully open for 3 months. They had a high vaccination rate. Is it because they've been open and there's small groups who are not been vaccinated? Is it because antibody levels have been going down a little bit? It's really hard to say right now, but I think that's what everyone's paying attention to and saying, hey, holidays are coming. This is not like last year. And I anticipate a lot more people are going to take those masks off and gather together indoors. So do the responsible thing and make sure you're communicating with everyone around you and that people are being safe and are hopefully vaccinated.
I love that you brought that up. We're going to continue that in the commercial break. But when we come back, a man once incarcerated and homeless now is an advocate, and he shares his story next. Stay with us. We are taking that break on the air. The conversation continues on Facebook Live right now. Okay, we are in break. Dr. Patel, one quick thing that I do want to mention to everybody, I know that we have our next guest coming up, is that I was at an event today and I was emceeing for a nonprofit. We're going to be talking about it in our next segment. People were hugging. It was hard to judge what to do with the handshake. I mean, do we elbow bump? What to do? Do you have any recommendations on how to keep that etiquette and really have that communication correct? Because even I'm having a hard time navigating it.
I am always going to be fist bumping and elbowing, even like in 10 years from now, because it's way cooler and safer. But also, I honestly think I feel a lot better when I'm in an area where there's a 100% vaccination rate. And so I think that's what it comes down to. Got to look to see your surroundings. If you're unsure, just maybe an air high five. It's okay.
I hope that we can become a socially acceptable society where that's totally okay. I'm being told by our director that it's time for us to switch. Dr. Patel, always great having you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Enjoy your pumpkin spice latte, Dion.
I will, absolutely. See ya. All right, we are getting ready for our next guest who, as we gear up for it, I want to give you this commercial break question. What is the biggest issue to you? For example, homeless crisis, the pandemic. Answer on Facebook Live, or we are also on YouTube as well. We are ABC7 News. And the issue, I know it's a broad question, but it pertains to the homeless crisis for our next segment, our next guest, because I had a chance to see him in person after following him for a good amount of time online on Twitter. And his story of being formerly incarcerated as someone who was addicted to drugs and being able to turn his life around was very impactful, to the point where I said it gave me goosebumps. So you'll get a chance to hear that in about 30 seconds. Tom, are you with us on the line?
Here, Dion, I'm here.
Hey, that's great. Okay, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for making this happen. We have just about 5, 6, 7 minutes with you, and we are coming back in about 15 seconds.
Great.
Okay, super. Here we go. Welcome back to Getting Answers. I'm Dion Lim. Today, I had the honor of emceeing Welcome Home's annual fundraiser called Home Sweet Home. It was at Harborview Restaurant in San Francisco. The nonprofit helps homeless families who are transitioning into permanent housing. And someone who spoke at the event, there he is, whose message is so strong, is Tom Wolfe. Now, he lived not only through homelessness, but also drug abuse and incarceration. Yes, that was his mugshot. Tom now speaks openly about the subject of recovery and the truth about homelessness, addiction, and drug policy. There you see him on your screen. Tom, great to have you on the show.
Well, thank you, Dion. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Right away, I said earlier, your story gave me goosebumps because it is so raw, it is so honest. Tell us how you became homeless and why it is so important for you to be so open about your story.
Well, I became homeless because of my drug addiction. I had foot surgery in early 2015. I was sent home with a 30-day supply of oxycodone for the pain. And that kind of developed into an addiction that spiraled over the next couple of years into heroin and then eventually fentanyl. And in early 2018, I actually was given a choice by my wife to either go to treatment or leave the home because my addiction, I wasn't paying bills. I had quit my job. All these things were happening. And I made the decision to leave the home at that time because the addiction was just too strong. And I spent the next 6 months living on the streets of San Francisco in the Tenderloin, homeless, hopeless, and addicted to heroin and fentanyl. And it wasn't until I actually got in trouble with the criminal justice system and ended up in jail when I got clean. And then I went to a 6-month inpatient treatment program here in San Francisco where I found recovery. And now I'm about 3.5 years into recovery, and I'm an advocate now for recovery and for changes to our approach around the drug crisis that's out of control in San Francisco, and changes to drug policy and also to talk about the intersectionality between drugs, drug use, and homelessness, and how that's complicating the issue around homelessness, especially here in San Francisco.
Yeah, and I think it resonates so much when you have that personal experience and are so transparent about it because you have lived it, and no better person to explain some of the solutions that you propose. Before we get to a little bit more about you, I want to tell everyone that Welcome Home provides these transitioning families with cookware and linens and kitchen appliances, things to help the transition into a permanent home and make sure that the vulnerable stay housed. So on that note, what are some of the organizations that helped you? Because to be sober for 3+ years is a big accomplishment.
Well, and I had a lot of support in that, I was in a lot of meeting rooms doing kind of 12-step meetings, which are support groups, but also organizations like the Salvation Army. They really helped me out a lot. They really helped turn my life around by providing me with some, basic tools and a foundation to kind of reestablish myself back in society. One of the big things around homelessness is when you're out on the street, you kind of become disassociated from the rest of society. And it's a very lonely existence. Even though there are other people that are also homeless on the street with you, you're not part of a community, a healthy community, let's put it that way. So, recovery is about reestablishing yourself. It's not just about dealing with the issues inside of you that led to your addiction, but it's also about reestablishing yourself, doing basic things that we all take for granted, like reestablishing a bank account, your credit, getting ID, job, resume, and then the basic things you need to live. And that's where this program where we were at this morning really, really helps out because it does provide those basic amenities that we all take for granted, everything from toiletries to furniture, linens, towels, things that for someone that's exiting homelessness, they very quickly find out that being housed, it takes a lot more than just, 4 walls. It takes all the tools that you need to make a home happen, cooking utensils, pots and pans, basic things. And, if you're just starting out again, or maybe you don't have a job yet, all these different barriers that come up in your recovery. And as you exit homelessness, having that type of support system is really, really helpful.
Yes, it's those basics that I think so many of us take for granted. And before I get to the next question, you reminded me, didn't you say at today's event that there was a momentous occasion? Weren't you getting a bank account, or there was something that you had mentioned that I thought was very memorable?
Well, yeah. So it wasn't until March of this year, March of 2021, that I actually was able to open a bank account. Wow. Because I had done so many things, overdrawing my bank account, bouncing checks, things like that to support my addiction, that nobody wanted to give me a chance. So it wasn't until March of this year where I was able to open a bank account. So I had to go for the first 2.5 years in recovery just, on cash only. And, so many people now, so many places now are, they don't take cash right now because of the pandemic. So you can imagine how much of a challenge that is, or finding a bank that will cash your check, how much of a challenge that is. So that really was a game changer for me.
Yes.
Because that allowed, once that bank account came along, it allowed me to do things like, rebuild my credit and things like that.
Oh, again, things you do not necessarily think about when it comes to homelessness. I know we only have about 90 seconds left, but along with housing, which you spoke so much about, what are some other solutions that you see?
Well, I really think it's important that we start focusing on reducing the demand around drugs. This year in San Francisco, we've had 511 overdose deaths through the end of September. So we're on track to meet the same threshold we met last year, which is around 700. So we really need to focus on expanding and promoting drug treatment in the city. We need a treatment on demand system. And we also need to really look at ways that we can work with law enforcement to reduce some of the supply on the street. We have open air drug dealing happening 24/7 in San Francisco, and it really is complicating the issue of homelessness in this city, as so many people on the street right now are self-medicating and struggling with addiction.
Yes, and not to mention the people who are on the street. We are taking a look at some of those pictures right now, and it's very easy to judge those people, but I think you have provided our audience with an idea of what it is really like to be homeless, and that you're a different face of maybe what they perhaps think homelessness is. So with that, we appreciate you so much for being on our program. If anybody wants to learn more about Tom, he has a website, tomwolf.org. He's also on the speaking circuit. You can check his work out also on Twitter as well. Tom, many thanks.
Thank you, Dion.
Coming up next, it is a new world out there, especially if you are single. We are getting into dating in a pandemic and the divide between vaccinated and the unvaccinated. So please be sure to stay with us. We are taking that quick break on the air. The conversation continues on Facebook Live right now. All right, we are in the break, 2 minutes. Tom, if you are still with us, thank you again. I feel like we only scratched the surface. Oh, he's gone already. He's logged off. I'll send him a nice note. So anybody who is out there on Facebook, thank you for sticking with us. I am Dion Lim TV on all social media platforms, and we have our commercial break question being, what is the biggest issue to you right now? The homeless crisis, the pandemic. Oh, Ashley says, thanks, Tom Wolf. She says, Dion, thanks for doing this every day. You are getting the message out there. I appreciate you. I'm only doing a special guest appearance on this show, but I am always on Instagram and Twitter. Samson says it is newsworthy for this show. Thank you, thank you. So yeah, chime in on Facebook your thoughts on what you would like to ask Dr. Patel, perhaps for next time, some concerns you have, and then also, you know, what are some issues that face you? I live in San Francisco. Certainly, the homeless crisis is something that I witness as I go to work every day here at KGO, and also, of course, the pandemic. Like I mentioned, I was at a big event earlier today. Everyone had to show proof of vaccination, but still, it is very challenging to navigate what people are comfortable with, what they are not. So how do those interactions play out during the day? So Erica wants to say the pandemic definitely is hers. And Heather, thank you. You are a milestone follower who says the homeless crisis is something that is very important to her. And before we get to our next very fun sounding segment, I just want to say Tom actually helped me understand a little bit more in depth what the homeless crisis was about, because before moving to San Francisco almost 5 years ago, I didn't fully understand the problem and how complex it was and how the politics worked. Still navigating that as well. All right, we're about 5 seconds away. Here we go, everybody. Once again, welcome back. This last segment is for all of you singles out there. It's the results of an annual study from dating website Match.com. Those are out. The site has been doing this for 11 years and essentially tracks the attitudes and thoughts of singles. Now, of course, COVID plays a huge role this year. We thought it'd be fun to bring these guests on our show since it is Friday. So, joining us to talk about it, you see in the center Dr. Helen Fisher, a biological anthropologist and scientific advisor at Match.com. Also, we have Dr. Justin Garcia. Give us a wave, an evolutionary biologist and sex researcher at the Kinsey Institute at Indiana University. Welcome to the show, both of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Great. All right, let's get started. Dr. Fisher, I want to start with you. Last year, the vaccine we know was not available. This year, it is. How has that changed how America dates? I think I have some ideas based off of what some of my girlfriends are griping to me about at the end of the day.
Well, what's amazing is that something like 73% of singles have been vaccinated, and that's a great deal more than the general population, which is about 64%. And at first I was really surprised at this because, you know, when you're in a partnership, you've got people who are going to urge you to go and get that vaccine. But it's singles who are getting the vaccine more. And I began to think to me, oh, right, these people are in the dating market. I mean, you know, they're trying to win life's greatest prize, which is a mating partner. And in fact, that's very healthy. You know, if you're in a long-term happy partnership, it slows the aging process actually and enables you to live longer. But the bottom line is they're advertising that they are healthy. They're also advertising that they're following the rules, they're respecting authority. And in fact, 48% of them believe that people who are unvaccinated are selfish, that they're not community oriented, that they are just not playing by the rules. So these people are advertising that they are clean and neat and available. and in fact that they're also respecting the rules and being good members of the community.
Dr. Fisher, I never thought about that, but it really tells you a lot about a person, whether or not they are vaccinated. So that is a little insight into who they are. So I can see that helping in the dating world.
Absolutely.
Dr.
Nobody wants, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, sorry, go ahead.
Nobody wants to go out with somebody who's self-centered.
Amen, sister. All right, Dr. Garcia, let's get to you now because, you know, as I was thinking about this segment, there are certainly make or break criteria when it comes to dating. For example, when I was in the dating world, I knew that I didn't want to date someone who smokes. So let's talk about the importance vaccination status has become for singles who are looking to mingle.
Oh, absolutely. And I think exactly as you said, we know that when it comes to dating and mating, we all have priorities. We bring certain, what Dr. Fisher and I call mate choice preferences to the table. But in our study, so it's our 11th year of the Singles in America study with Match, every year we'll ask about the things that people are interested in partners. And exactly as you said, vaccination status, right? So we know, as Helen said, 65% of singles would like their dating partner to be vaccinated, but then we ask them to rank the importance of that and compare it to other things. And 58% of singles in our sample said that the vaccine is important. Compare that to 53% that said political affiliation was important, or 43% that said religion and ethnicity was important.
Wow.
So we see that the vaccination status is bumping up in the way that we're prioritizing the things we're looking for in a partner.
That is fascinating, up there with religion and some of those other non-negotiables. That is pretty shocking, but I can understand it. We only have about a minute or so left, so Dr. Fisher and Dr. Garcia, you know, this is an awkward thing for me to say on TV, but can you please explain what the not-so-slutty summer is? What is this term that you have coined?
Absolutely. Way over 50% of singles now will not have sex with somebody who's not vaccinated, will not start a romance with somebody who's not vaccinated, will not even go out on a first date with somebody who's not vaccinated. So, I mean, if I say one thing, get vaxxed, it is your ticket to romance.
And I think I love that. Dr. Fisher says it perfectly. And I think as we look at the data, what we really, our big takeaway from it is, although there were a lot of predictions that people were going to have a lot of fun this summer, perhaps and particularly in their romantic and sexual life, what we found was this deep commitment to getting to know a partner, much more interest in meaningful connection and sex that happens in the context of meaningful relationships. So things like one-night stands, friends with benefits, those numbers were the lowest we've ever seen them in over a decade of asking the question.
Who knew? Yeah. And all it took was a pandemic for people to rethink their one-night stand status or behaviors. How interesting is that?
You said it.
Dr. Fisher and Dr. Garcia, many thanks to the both of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, as we head to break, I do want to share some of the Facebook comments that we are receiving at facebook.com/ABC7News. Please be sure to tune over there as we head into our commercial break. I'll read some of those there. Okay, thank you both again. We are wrapping up our show.
Thank you very much.
Actually,
thanks for having us.
By the way,
Justin.
See ya. All right, so I wanted to share this comment from user Heather, who said, I was vaccinated on March 17th at a Salt Lake VA hospital. I received the Moderna booster April 14th. I'm been waiting on the next booster. I am single and live in Salt Lake City. I choose to be single. I'm getting also a lot of interesting comments from people who say they will not date someone who is unvaccinated. So that's certainly, in a very unscientific way, goes with what the results of this Match.com study seem to point out, that it is very important to people. Ashley says, I'm actually becoming Muslim because I never met the love of my life 6 months ago. Others are saying how important religion is. Heather weighing in saying she is LDS, and that is up there. Ashley also advocating for people to get vaccinated. I just want to take a moment to show my appreciation for everyone who has tuned in and has chimed in on Facebook, because this show really hinges upon you and your weighing in, your comments, your questions for not only our guests, but also for me. If you have any that you have for Dr. Patel, please feel free to leave them in the comments of our Facebook page. Also, we are on YouTube. Feel free always to find me as well on social media. I am at Dion Lim TV on Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook. Randy says, good job, thank you. I appreciate you being here. And I just would love to hear what everybody thinks also, because it is Friday. We want to end on a little bit of a light note, just on how you have changed maybe your thinking, your ideology on finding a mate, if you are single, or if you're not. You know, just kind of your thoughts on getting vaccinated and how important it is for your friends, because I know that also impacts our friend circles. COVID certainly has affected that for many people, myself included. I realize that many people who I thought had the same ideology as me on the issue of vaccinations do not. Oh, here we go. Back on the air. Once again, thank you so much for joining us today. We covered a lot from COVID. We heard from a former homeless man who became an advocate, and we also learned about the importance of vaccinations in the dating world. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Dion Lim. We'll see you right back here for ABC7 News at 4. Okay, we are off the air, everyone, on Facebook. My extreme gratitude to all of you. This was just a one-time appearance, but hopefully I will see all of you soon. Take care, and I will see you on my Facebook page as well. Cheers.